probably focus a lot more on the Euros than the Copa America, but we will be keeping track of the Copa America. And what I wanted to do is, if you watched the channel, you would have seen we published a complete guide to the Euros, where we looked in depth on each team. So I thought, why don't we do the exact same thing, but we do it for the Copa America. So that's exactly what we're doing. We're looking at each team, going group by group. I'm going to identify their biggest strength, their biggest weakness, their key player, and a player to watch. Now, this is hopefully going to be very informative for some of you who maybe don't follow CONMEBOL, CONCACAF, not aware too much of the Copa America teams. So hopefully this can inform you. Let me know if you do watch, and I'll go into watch the Copa America, who you're supporting, who you think is winning the competition, and yeah, I want to get this out of the way before the Euros starts. So yeah, let's begin. So we're gonna go group by group, as I said, and we begin in Group A with Argentina, whose biggest strength is continuity. Now, I mean, the biggest strength of this Argentina side is, well, they're really good. Argentina are the reigning World Cup champions and holders of the Copa America. They are FIFA's top-ranked national team, and their captain is an 8-time Ballon d'Or winner. On paper, things are going very well, and what makes their hopes even greater for this tournament is the fact that for this Copa America, they will have pretty much the exact same team as they had for the previous Copa America win and World Cup win. So that is very, very encouraging, as these players know how to win and get the job done. The odds of another major trophy to round off this golden generation is very likely. Weakness: lack of tests. Despite the incredible performance of the national team in the last 2 years, they haven't really tested themselves too much versus high quality opposition. Their last games since the World Cup have been against very poor opposition, such as El Salvador, Curacao, Costa Rica, Indonesia, and others. While they have of course been tested in World Cup qualification and done pretty well, the lack of high quality opposition faced since the World Cup could mean Argentina are a bit complacent and get caught off guard at this tournament. Even in World Cup qualification they've been good, but still, they lost at home to Uruguay, which was a bit of a wake-up call, and maybe this lack of good tournament preparation could be a problem. Key player: Lionel Messi. I mean, I don't really need to say anything to justify this, do I? Of course, Messi is the key player, but it will be interesting how he does after a year in the MLS. Let's see what his level is at. I mean, either way, he's going to be incredible, and if he doesn't perform, Argentina are well and truly finished at this Copa America. The one to watch: Alejandro Garnacho. Man United winger Alejandro Garnacho is among a handful of young Argentine players who are considered the future of the senior squad. The 19-year-old has been included in the Copa America squad and is one of the few players to break into the squad since the World Cup campaign, with Argentina opting for guys they can trust. However, Garnacho, after this great season for Man United, has broken into the team and has a very real chance of getting minutes at the Copa and making a name for himself on the international stage, and proving that he can be the future of the Argentinian national team. Next up is Canada, whose biggest strength is players with high-level experience. While this will be Canada's first ever Copa America appearance, they do have some talent most the current squad were able to compete at their first major tournament at the 2022 World Cup. And while they were not amazing, it was a great taste of tournament football for them, which they will definitely need going into this Copa America. Their biggest weakness: instability. There's no simple way to put it. Canada will be the underdogs in their group and will more than likely battle out with Peru to avoid finishing bottom of the group. That's because they're not very good and have had a really bad last year since the World Cup. Now, after the World Cup, things were not actually too bad for them. It was a good experience, they had some good players in the squad, but since then they have lost at home to Jamaica, drawn to Guadeloupe and Guatemala, and got smacked 4-1 by Japan. This is because they've had their manager, John Herdman, leave, and the reason he left was because of poor backing from the Canadian FA. Now they have Jesse Marsh in charge, who has barely managed any games for the national team ahead of this tournament, and all this instability means the hopes of Canada making out these groups are worrying. The key player, Alphonso Davies. The obvious gem of his Canadian side, Alphonso Davies is a world-class player and probably the best player in the whole of CONCACAF. He plays a more advanced role for Canada and makes things happen, scoring the first goal for the side at a World Cup. If Canada are to have any hope of getting out of this group, Alphonso Davies will have to be at his best and drag his side to glory. The one to watch, Jonathan David. The right-hand man for Davies is Jonathan David, who will also have to be at his best at this Copa America for Canada to progress. He's got the talent and has a decent record for the national side, but he didn't really perform at the last World Cup. He's been linked for some big moves in previous years, having done well for Lille, but this is his moment to show the world he's capable of turning up in the big moments and competing versus the very best. A good Copa, and David might well earn himself a move to a bigger club, looking for a striker. Next up, Chile. Their biggest strength is their manager. Now, Chile have a great history in Copa Americas, winning back-to-back in 2015 and 2016, and while this isn't a great squad compared to then, their manager means they just might be able to pull off a shock. Their manager is Ricardo Gareca, who, if you're not familiar with, is a pretty fantastic manager when it comes to CONMEBOL teams. He took the Peru national team to their first World Cup in 32 years in 2018, which was absolutely incredible. Not to mention he took them to a Copa America third place in 2015, before a historic Copa America final in 2019. That was their first in 44 years, and he joined the Chile national team in January this year. Since joining, his impact has shown, with Chile losing just 4 games of its 11, and Chile smashing Albania and almost getting a draw versus France with a 3-2 loss. Chile are under great leadership with a manager who has a lot of experience in overachieving at Copa Americas, and this could help Chile do something incredible at this tournament. Their biggest weakness: too many older players. While the generation of 2015 to 16 produced the greatest achievement in Chilean football history, and they do have a lot of experience to offer at this tournament, there's perhaps too many of them still lurking about, which may hold Chile back. The likes of Gary Medel, Claudio Bravo, Alexis Sanchez, Mauricio Isla, Eduardo Vargas and Arturo Vidal are all still part of the squad, this Copa. The key player, Alexis Sanchez. While I said that Chile shouldn't rely on those older players, there is one who still has the quality to deliver and will be crucial to the side, and that's Alexis Sanchez. He's probably the greatest Chilean footballer of all time, their top goal scorer and current vice captain. While he's very old now, he's still playing at a good level for Inter Milan and has a lot to offer. This will be his last tournament for Chile, so this is a last dance for him, and he still has the ability to make it a special tournament. So Chile will be hoping they can squeeze something out of him at this Copa America. The one to watch, Ben Brereton Diaz. Now this is a weird one. A striker who grew up in Stoke-on-Trent went from playing for Blackburn Rovers to coming off the bench for Chile against Argentina in Brazil, facing Messi at a Copa America for Chile. Ben Brereton is English, but his mother is from Chile, so he could reside for them, and he decided to represent them in 2019, instantly going into the team and scoring in his first start at the Copa America. Chile exited the tournament at the quarters, but by then Brereton Diaz was already a hero. However, he hasn't been involved recently because the manager Gareca has come in and said he needs to learn Spanish before he can get called up. So I actually have no idea if he's going to the Copa and if he's learned Spanish yet. But if he does, that's some story to watch, because he actually has a pretty good record for the national team. So don't put it past him to bang at this Copa. Next up is Peru. Their biggest strength is experience. While Peru are not fantastic right now, they have an incredible record in Copa Americas and seem to always turn it on at the Copa. The last time they were grouped in a Copa America was all the way back in 1995, which is a pretty insane record. Since 1995, they have made at least the quarterfinals, so Peru have a brilliant history with this competition, and a lot of the current squad do have that experience as well, so they might have some confidence in this Copa America because of this recent success. Their biggest weakness, recent form. Results for Peru have been abysmal, to say the least. In World Cup qualification, they have just 2 points from 6 games, sitting dead last of the CONMEBOL group. They've scored just 1 goal in those 6 games as well, and their manager has been sacked as a result of this awful form. Peru are in such a bad place right now, and confidence is low. They struggle to score and are struggling to get any wins, which is not good going into this Copa America. Their key player, Pedro Galeza. Orlando City's Pedro Galeza has over 100 international appearances and remains the number 1 choice in goal for Peru. He's been number 1 for a while and is a very talented goalkeeper and never let down the Peruvian national team. As I mentioned, Peru in general are not in a good place, so Galeza is going to face a tornado of shots, and he's going to have to be at his best for Peru to have any chance of doing something at this Copa America. The one to watch, Paulo Guerrero. Now this one is just to watch out because of how ludicrous this is, but Paulo Guerrero is an absolute legend of the Peru national team. He's the all-time top goal scorer, the top scoring active player in Copa America history, the first Peruvian to be nominated for the Ballon d'Or, the oldest Peruvian player to appear in a World Cup, and was even declared the best South American centre-forward between 2010 and 2020. He's a legend, but he's now 40 years old and is still going to be starting up front at this Copa kind of sums up the state of the Peruvian national team right now. Now, he's a GOAT and is always fantastic at coppers. Can he somehow, some way pull off an insane feat and perform at the Copa America, being 40 years old? Let's find out, because if he does, this guy might go down as one of the greatest players to ever live at this point. Okay, on to Group B, we have Mexico. Their biggest strength is youth. Now, Mexico are in a bit of a difficult spot right now, but after the World Cup, there's been a bit of a reset button pressed at the national team level, which could help them. They went from the oldest squad at the 2022 World Cup with an average age of 28 to now having an average age of just 25 and one of the younger squads in this Copa America. This shows how they have completely flipped the squad, bringing in a lot more young, hungry players and getting rid of the older generation who had let them down. This youth and vibrance in the squad could give Mexico that injection they need to go far in this tournament. Their biggest weakness, the squad. While these youngsters may be amazing, generally the squad is pretty poor when it comes to talent. They have barely any players playing in Europe, and when I say barely, I really do mean barely. You have Edson Alvarez, Santiago Jimenez, Cesar Montes, Jesus Vasquez and Oscar Pineda. There might be a few more, but that's about it. Literally everybody in their squad plays in the League MX or somewhere outside Europe, which doesn't necessarily mean they are bad players, of course, but the lack of talent playing in Europe suggests that generally this squad does lack talent and quality when you compare it to previous generations where they had a bunch of Mexicans playing in Europe for top teams. That's not the case anymore. Their key player, Santiago Jimenez. One of those few players who does play in Europe is Santiago Jimenez. Now, he had a sensational season last year for Feyenoord, and this year has been just as good. He's fairly young and is yet to have the chance to prove himself at a major tournament for Mexico. Jimenez has been linked to a lot of big clubs, so this is his chance to prove he's worth the money and he can perform on the big stage for his country, following the steps of his predecessor, Xavier Hernandez. The one to watch, Marcelo Flores. The former Arsenal youth product Marcelo Flores has moved to Mexico after a brief loan stint in Spain. Now, Flores isn't a star in the League MX, but the 20-year-old winger is an important player for the national team's future. He was left out of the World Cup squad in 2022, but he's in the Copa America squad, so this could be the opportunity for Flores to make his mark at international level and potentially get a move back to Europe. Next up is Ecuador, whose biggest strength is their squad. Now, it's safe to say Ecuador are going through somewhat of a golden generation right now. This is a country whose highest finish at the World Cup was the round of 16. Their highest finish was at a Copa America was 4th place, which was all the way back in 1993. However, they qualified for the previous World Cup and did pretty well in the groups, only narrowly going out. And with this squad, it is stacked with talent. You have the likes of Purvis Estupiñán, a fantastic fullback for Brighton, a Leverkusen invincible in Pierre Ngapié, a Chelsea wonder kid in Kendry Baez, the experienced batsman Enner Valencia, and of course the most expensive player in Premier League history in Moises Caicedo. This squad is one of the best they've had in a long time, so with the right coaching, they may be able to do something at this Copa America. Their biggest weakness, goals. While they have the talent and a batsman in Enner Valencia up top, that can only get you so far. Sanchez. In their last 10 games, they failed to score in 4 of those 10. And out of those games, they only scored more than 1 goal in a game 3 times. That's really, really bad, and I worry about this going into the Copa, as even if their defence is solid, which it is, winning games by such a little margin is not good, and the lack of goals could hurt them. The key player, Moises Caicedo. Of course, the key player of Ecuador is the most expensive Premier League player, Moises Caicedo. He's had a mixed season for Chelsea, but did end it very well, and he always performs for the national team. He's the glue in this side, as he's vital to their great defensive record, but also crucial to them building up in the attack. Everything goes through him attacking-wise, everything defensive-wise goes through him. Caicedo is the most important player in this team, and they need him to perform in the Copa America. The one to watch is Kendry Baez. The teenage sensation, just 16 years old, Kendry Baez is seen as the shining light and next best thing for Ecuador. He's already signed for Chelsea and has become the youngest player to score in World Cup qualifying history recently. He's been balling out in his club career in the Copa Libertadores as well, and is already a regular for the senior national team. He's got so much ability, and this is his moment in this Copa America to make a real name for himself. At 16, if he can perform at this Copa America, the hype around him will massively build, and let's see if he can show that he will be a future world-class player. I must say, as a Chelsea fan, I'm very excited to see what he does. Next up is Venezuela. Their biggest strength is their recent form. Venezuela are usually one of the worst teams in CONMEBOL, but they have been a real surprise recently and shown signs that they are in a great spot right now. They currently sit 4th in World Cup qualification in CONMEBOL with just 1 loss, beating Chile 3-0 and even managing to draw away from home versus Brazil, which is one of the best results the nation has had in recent years. They are much better than their history suggests. They go into this Copa with the most confidence they've probably ever had going into a tournament. The biggest weakness, goals. While they are thriving right now, this is off the back of a really strong defensive unit and pragmatic side, which means Venezuela don't score too many goals. Besides that 3-0 result versus Chile, who did have 10 men, in their last 13 matches, they have only scored more than 1 goal in a game 1 time, and that was against Saudi Arabia. These guys barely score any goals, and it's pretty much guaranteed they will score just 1 goal max in a game at this Copa America, which is really not good, because if they do concede and that defence is breached, then I don't really back them to come back into the game and score more than 1 goal. The key player, Salomon Rondon. A name Premier League fans will be very aware of. Salomon Rondon, who used to play for Everton and Newcastle, was actually a pretty solid striker most Prem fans will remember. Well, he's still knocking about and is the starting striker for Venezuela. And he's actually banging in the goals recently for his club in Mexico this season. He's got 19 goals and he's going to be massive for Venezuela. As we said, Venezuela lack goals, so all the goal scoring burden will be on Rondon to deliver when he does get chances. The one to watch, Jefferson Soteldo. Now, if you have never seen this man play, well, you're in for a treat. He's absolutely tiny, at just 5'3", but he's so rapid and technical and skillful on the ball with fantastic dribbling. He plays in the Brazilian league and is one of the more exciting players in this Venezuelan national team. As I mentioned, they lack creativity and goals, so Satado is going to have to produce some magic, which he is definitely capable of if Venezuela are to advance from the groups. Next up is Jamaica, whose biggest strength is their squad. The Reggae Boys have been in a really bad state in recent years, but one thing that they do have going for them is their squad. They actually have a really talented team with some good players who play for good teams in Europe. They have the likes of Leon Bailey, Ethan Pinnock, Mikel Antonio, Bobby Reed, Andre Blake and others, which is a really good squad. The problem is, not all of them will actually be at the Copa most likely, and they never really seem to make it gel. Jamaica's biggest weakness is the FA. As I said, not all of those players will be at the Copa, and you're probably thinking why? Well, Leon Bailey, their star man, recently announced he was, basically retiring from international football, exposed a bunch of issues that he has with the FA of Jamaica, such as not having balls for training, never being paid, a lack of travel arrangements, and even having to train in women's t-shirts because they don't have enough shirts. The FA is an absolute mess, and all of this off-field turmoil means Jamaica may be in for a rough ride at this Copa. The key player, Damari Gray. One of the recent players to declare for Jamaica, Damari Gray, former Everton and Leicester man, who is now in Saudi Arabia, has actually been a star for Jamaica since joining them. He's got a really good record of 5 goals in 10 games for Jamaica, and without Leon Bailey, Damari Gray will be the man who is needed to step up in attack for Jamaica. It's going to be interesting how he does, and if he can keep up that form, because it's one thing scoring those goals in friendlies and qualification matches, but it's another doing it at a major tournament. The one to watch, Shamar Nicholson. One of the other attackers who also has a good record for the national side is Shamar Nicholson. He's a weird one, as he's playing in Europe for Clermont Foot in Ligue 1, but hasn't had exactly a great season, only scoring 4 goals. However, for the national team, he's superb, with 16 goals from 44 caps already. Shamar Nicholson is set to lead the line for Jamaica at the Copa America, and he has massive pressure on his shoulders to perform. Next up, we go to Group C, and we begin with the USA, whose biggest strength is tournament experience. The US felt as though they had made significant progress at the World Cup for the way they approached games against England and Holland. They recently clinched a 3rd consecutive CONCACAF Nations League title and continue to dominate their region. Their performance at the last World Cup was encouraging and proved they are a pretty good side who are able to compete with those bigger nations and be competitive. That experience at the World Cup will be massive for this team, who has a lot of talent and now have some experience at a major tournament going into this Copa America on home soil. Their biggest weakness, performances versus bigger nations. A 3-1 loss to Germany in October 2023 is maybe the best example of the transition process that's ongoing with the US team. They tried to grow out the last cycle and grow into 2026. The US is still searching for its top striker and needs to develop a stronger attacking identity. against better organised opposition, the US have struggled at the last World Cup, getting knocked out versus Netherlands. In recent friendlies, they have also struggled against the likes of Colombia, and in the latter rounds of this competition, when they face a big boys such as Brazil and Argentina, you do fear that this US side are not really ready to compete with these sides just yet. The key player, Christian Pulisic. Though no longer US captain, Christian Pulisic remains the beating heart of this squad, and the player whose performances will likely dictate just how far Berhalter's team go this summer. The AC Milan player has locked down his role on the right for the US, and is by far and away the most talented American player in this team, hell, maybe even of all time. Captain America will need to be out in full force this summer for the US to pull off something special at the Copa. The one to watch is Folarin Balogun. Folarin Balogun had a sensational year for Reims last season, and that prompted major interest in him across Europe and also on the international stage, with both Nigeria and England fighting for him. However, he ended up going to the US, which is a huge pull for them, and despite the former Arsenal man's form for Monaco being patchy, he remains the most talented striker option they have and should start at the Copa. This is his chance to prove the hype around him was worth it, and the US have a truly fantastic striker on their hands, but we will see how he performs for the national team. Next up is Uruguay, whose biggest strength is their recent form. Now, they were deeply underwhelming at the 2022 World Cup, but Marcelo Bielsa has livened things up with his trademark brand of football. Uruguay have won 7 of their 12 games under Bielsa, including back-to-back victories over Brazil and Argentina. The football is good and the vibes are fantastic. They sit second of CONMEBOL World Cup qualification right now, just 2 points behind Argentina, and remain the only side to beat Argentina since the 2022 World Cup. Their biggest weakness: lack of tournament experience. Now, this isn't necessarily about tournament experience, it's more so winning experience. Marcelo Bielsa has been incredible since joining Uruguay, and is viewed as a visionary of football. His influence on the game has been great, and his football is beautiful to watch. However, Bielsa doesn't have a whole lot of trophies to show for this, as his football isn't the most effective when it comes to tournament football and winning. The best he's done in tournament football was a runners-up at the 2004 Copa America with Argentina, and then a runners-up in the Europa League and Copa del Rey finals with Bilbao. This lack of tournament winning experience may be a problem, and also this Uruguay squad lack any winners in international football, with almost all the previous generation that won the 2011 Copa America now gone. They don't have too many players or a manager who knows how to win these tournaments. The key player, Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez might be the most key player on this list. You're probably thinking, how? Before Messi, really? Well, this is why. Darwin Núñez has the potential to be the worst striker at this Copa America and completely ruin Uruguay's hopes. He also has the potential to be the best striker at this tournament and guide Uruguay to a Copa America. Both of these scenarios are very realistic, as Núñez can be the most frustrating striker in the world, but also incredible. Luckily for Uruguay, when he puts on that blue top, he is usually very good, scoring goals versus Argentina and Brazil in World Cup qualifiers, and he's currently the top scorer in qualifying. But it's one thing doing that in qualifying and another on the big stage. Núñez must perform for Uruguay, and all of of Uruguay's hopes rely on him stepping up and not turning into Liverpool Nunes at this Copa. The one to watch, Luis Suarez. Now I have no idea if he's going to the Copa. As of recording, their squad hasn't been announced, but that's the reason why it's one to watch, to see if he makes it. The 37-year-old has proved at the club level he could be an impact player, despite his age. He can't stop scoring for Inter Miami with Messi. His knees don't work and there were questions about his stamina, and while those questions haven't been entirely answered, Suarez is finding the sort of form, albeit in a lesser league, that saw him tear up Europe. More broadly, he is making his case for Uruguay's Copa America squad, and Uruguay have options in forward areas, but Suarez is showing enough to suggest he might have one more major tournament in him, and bring that vital experience they need as Marcelo Bielsa's side dream of tournament glory in the United States. Next up is Panama, whose biggest strength is their recent form. Panama are minnows in the Copa America, but they go into this tournament on some very good form and with some hope they can pull off a shock. In 2023, they lost just 3 games, 2 of those versus Mexico and 1 of them in the Gold Cup final. The fact they made it to the Gold Cup final is impressive in itself, as they beat the USA on the way to the final. Panama may not have the most talented squad, but under their manager they're playing very well and have some good confidence heading into the Copa America. Their biggest weakness though is their squad. Now I did just say Panama are in some decent form, and that is true, but their squad is not really capable of competing with the big boys at this Copa. They have just 1 player who plays in Europe's top 5 leagues, and only 6 more who actually play in Europe in general, with most of those playing in second tier leagues. They don't really have any stars in the squad and lack the talent to do anything special, but maybe with their team spirit and chemistry they can pull something off in spite of the lack of talent. The key player, Murillo. That one player who does play in the top 5 league is Murillo, who will be crucial for Panama. He is a centre-back who plays for Marseille, and he's very experienced, with 70 caps for the national team. He is quite clearly, ability-wise, the best player in the Panama squad, and he can expect a lot of traffic coming his way at this Copa when Panama face the better sides, so Murillo will have to be a rock at the back for Panama to progress out of their group. And the one to watch for Panama is Alberto Carrasquilla, one of the ballers who plays in America for Panama is Carrasquilla, who is a midfielder playing for Houston Dynamo in the MLS. He's a fantastic player who has performed very well for the national team before, being awarded the Best Player Award at the 2023 Gold Cup. He was also in the CONCACAF Nations League Best XI in 2023, so he's a fantastic player for the national team and one to watch for sure, because let's see if he can replicate those performances in CONCACAF into the Copa America. Next up is Bolivia, whose biggest strength is their continuity. I mean, Bolivia are the whipping boys of South America. Since 1997, they've only progressed out of the groups once, which was in 2011. Bolivia are not a great side, but one thing they do have going for them is continuity. Pretty much all of their players play in the Bolivian league, and most of them for the same team in Bolívar, who are actually a pretty good side and doing very well in the Copa Libertadores. So I guess their players know each other well, which will be somewhat of a cohesive side at the very least at this tournament. Their biggest weakness, away form. I mean, they have a lot of weaknesses, but the biggest one is probably the away record. The only way Bolivia actually win this advantage, they get exposed. They have just one win out of their last 7 away games, and that was in a friendly against Saudi Arabia. If anything, the altitude is now going to be a problem because their players are so used to playing in this, especially playing in the Bolivian league. They probably might struggle at this Copa with normal altitude, so not looking too good for them. Their key player, Boris Cespedes. I mean, I know nothing about the Bolivian national team, and I was researching, trying to find anybody who I can talk about, but it was quite hard, so I've just gone for one of the only ones who plays in Europe, and that is Boris Cespedes. Now he plays in the Swiss First Division and is a midfielder. I mean, I have no idea if he's actually good or not, but he plays in the Swiss league, which is a pretty decent league, so yeah, maybe he can be a baller for them. Their one to watch is Carlos Lampe. Again, I don't know much, but I'm going to go for the goalkeeper Carlos Lampe, as he will most likely be the goalkeeper who has the most to do at this Copa. He's going to be bombarded in that goal, and he's 37 now, so I'm not sure if he can handle that at this stage in his career, so let's see how he does. Okay, on to the final group, Group D, Brazil. Their biggest strength is their recent form. After an abysmal 2023, Brazil seem to be heading on the right path again. It seems they are finding their identity without Neymar, and their new manager, Doranville Jr., is a solid coach with lots of experience in Brazilian football. And while he's got no experience on the international stage, under him they did manage to draw at Spain a 3-3 and beat England at Wembley. That's pretty impressive and seems to have given a bit more hope and confidence into this Brazil side, which was deeply needed after their 2023. So now they go into this Copa America, still not in an amazing place, but with a bit of hope and confidence, which is fantastic. Their biggest weakness, instability. Brazil have a very deep roster with lots of talent, but this has partly been their problem. They don't have a settled team. In the last year, 32 players who were previously uncapped have been called up to the squad. 32. That's ridiculous. There is no sort of cohesion or chemistry in this team, with the starting 11 changing every single game, and part of the reason for this is because Brazil are on their 3rd manager in a year. All of this instability and constant changing of managers and players is not helpful for Brazil going into this Copa America. The key player, Vinicius Jr. Of course, the key man is Vinicius Jr. He's a favourite for the Ballon d'Or, and if he performs at this Copa, he will most likely win it. However, the thing is, Vinny doesn't have a great record for Brazil. In fact, he's made 28 appearances and has just 3 goals. That's one more than 17-year-old Endrick, who's played just 4 games. Vinny must step up, as Neymar is out of his Copa. This is officially Vinny's team, and he must take the mantle of being the main guy and star player for Brazil and take them to glory. The one to watch is Endrick. Of course, the one to watch is Endrick, the teenage sensation. Still just 17, he is already approaching superstar status, thanks to some exciting performances, and of course the fact he will join Real Madrid after the tournament. That deal was arranged well over a year ago, and the hype machine has been revving ever since. He would have been an impact sub at the Copa, but after scoring versus both Spain and England, Endrick will likely start at the number 9 position for Brazil at this Copa America. That's big pressure, but this will be our first glimpse of just how good Endrick really is, and if he is ready for Real Madrid yet. Next up is Colombia, whose biggest strength is their recent form. Colombia are the only undefeated team in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying, beating Brazil on the way. This Colombia side has bounced back after their failing of not qualifying for the last World Cup, and look a side reinvigorated, ready to compete once again. Their latest friendlies also show they're capable of competing on the global stage, having gone to Spain and beat them 1-0 and also beating Romania. They are in a very good state right now and have lots of confidence that they could win this entire Copa. Their biggest weakness is reliance on key players. Failing to qualify for the World Cup has opened up old wounds in Colombia. A reliance on one or two players has always been Colombia's Achilles heel, and that burden has been lumped onto Luis Diaz. While they are doing very well right now, Luis Diaz has been the main reason why, with 2 goals in qualifying against Brazil, dragging them to victory. They are very reliant on him and some other players, and if they don't perform, I'm not entirely sure if Colombia will perform. The key player, Luis Diaz. Well, I mean, I've pretty much said all I need about Luis Diaz, but he is the star player and only attacker in this side who can really win a game on his own. I basically already said all I need about Diaz, but he is the James Rodriguez of this side, although James will be at this Copa, and all of Colombia's hopes rely on him. The one to watch, Yasser Esprilla. Well, this Yasser Esprilla is the future of this Colombian national team. The 20-year-old had no problem settling into European football and made his senior national team debut in 2022. Even with 2 brief cameos, Esprilla looked like he could become Colombia's next great number 10. He is going to be at this Copa and will have a role to play, and this feels like the right moment for Esprilla to show the world just how good he can be. Next up is Paraguay, whose biggest strength is their defense. Paraguay have a reputation for being a nasty and very tough team to beat, and that's what they continue to be. Under their new manager, who has played just 4 games, they have won only once. But to be fair, they have conceded only 2 goals in those 4 games, and those goals came 1 apiece versus Argentina and Colombia. Only conceding 1 to these 2 teams is a pretty impressive record, and that defence is going to have to be rock solid in this tough group. Their biggest weakness is goals. This side might be the most goal-shy team in the whole of football right now. In their last 6 World Cup qualifying games, they have a whopping 1 goal, and that was against the worst side in South America, Bolivia. They are a very dull side and lack anybody in attack who can perform, and this lack of goals is a major issue when you consider they're in a group versus Colombia and Brazil. I highly doubt, based on their record, they will even score a goal versus these 2, or even in this entire key player, Miguel Almiron. Due to the lack of goals, they have to rely on one of their best attackers, Miguel Almiron, to perform. I mean, to be fair, that sums up why they probably can't score, as they're relying on Almiron for the goals. But nevertheless, we've seen Almiron for Newcastle will be able to put a few games together where he turns into some mad player, and Paraguay need him to do that at this Copa. As I said, they have basically nobody in attack except him, and any chance they have of scoring a goal at this Copa is going to come down to Almiron. The one to watch is Julio Enciso. One of the up-and-coming hopes of the national team is Julio Enciso. He's a great one to give for Brighton, but unfortunately has been injured for most of this season. He will still be at the Copa America though, and this is a chance for him to do something for his national team, as he's yet to score a goal for them. It's a big ask for him to perform at such a big tournament at a very young age, off the back of a serious injury, but if Enciso is a truly special talent, then this is his chance to prove prove it. Okay, and finally the last team is Costa Rica, whose biggest strength is their manager. Costa Rica are in a bit of a transitional stage right now, moving away from that older generation, which was fantastic, and bringing in a more younger generation. They've got the perfect manager to do this though in Gustavo Alfaro. He's a very experienced manager and most importantly experienced on the international stage dealing with younger players. He was the Ecuador manager that took them to their first World Cup since 2014 and did very well at that 22 World Cup. When he took over at Ecuador, a lot of those Ecuadorians such as Caicedo, Hincapié, Estupiñán were young prospects, but he developed them into fantastic national team players. He needs to do that with this new generation of Costa Ricans, and he is the perfect man for that job. Their weakness: experience. Naturally, with a young squad, the problem is experience. After the legend Keylor Navas announced his retirement from international football, Costa Rica have got a very, very young team. They have just one player remaining from that legendary 2014 World Cup team that managed to get to a quarter final. Everybody else in the squad is very, very young with very little experience at a major tournament. Now this can be a good thing, and is a good thing that this younger generation is going to get exposure to major tournaments, but it's also a problem as they might struggle with the pressure that comes with major tournaments like the Copa America. The key player is Joel Campbell. The only survivor from that 2014 squad, Joel Campbell, the former Arsenal player, is still playing and still key for the national team. He's only 31, which isn't too old, but he's by far and away the most experienced player in this Costa Rican squad. That experience he has will be monumental at this Copa, being one of the only players to play at a major tournament before, and he will need to guide those youngsters who may have a lot of nerves at this Copa America. The one to watch finally is the goalkeeper. As I mentioned, the legendary Keylor Navas has announced his retirement just before the tournament, which means the number one spot has opened up. This leaves doubt over who takes the spot, with none of the three options having much experience on the international stage, naturally with Navas playing all the games, so it's very unclear as to who will play at the Copa America in goal. Whoever does has very, very big shoes to fill. So there we go. That is your complete guide to the Copa America. But if you have enjoyed this video, please leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in another video.